a lot of books written and different stuff like that that will support whatever line of argument you want to use. So that kind of leave the whole situation kind of like, I mean, very eerie. Like the way that I able to cut through it though is to apply some critical thinking. Not just following information from here, information from there, etymological meaning. I mean, all of this have its place. Don't get me wrong. But instead of just trying to find information all around that support your argument in whichever direction, what I find that really slim things down is to apply some critical thinking to that whole process. And that able to make me cut the chase in a lot of things. I'll show you, for example, when we were researching, we find enough information to dispute the position of the European with the claims that they were making using these biblical stories. Because they use this story, you have the book there, Ras Adonai, for slow-mo sands, that show you how they use mythology to make claim to the land of Palestine.
True.
When you look into book like the Bible on Earth, for Israel Finkelstein, you also find information in there that show you that a lot of this stuff, it is not really historical. It is not like what we have been traditionally taught. I'm going to introduce another book here for a rabbi called S. David Sperling, the original Torah. All right? Now, when we go through all of this, Finkelstein, S. David Sperling, I'm just going to name 3 books here, and Slow-Mo Sands, we find enough information to say, all right, these Jews were making false claims using mythology. End of story. But then, when we look down in Ethiopia's account now, it becomes very difficult to get a hand and situation down there. But you know what helped me? To really just clear up all of that?
What?
His Majesty. And you allude to what His Majesty say about receiving the Old Testament in the early days and then receive the good news when the gospel of the New Testament come forward. And what that tells me is that both Judaism and Christianity were imported into Ethiopia. His Majesty's speech is suggesting this. Because he's saying we receive these things into Ethiopia. All right? So then, okay, critical thinking. Now, if Ethiopia received all of this from Palestine, from the Europeans, these people out here that make these claims through all these biblical writing, and we can use books like S. David Sperling, Israel Finkelstein, the Bible on Earth, Slow-Mo Sand, the invention of the people called Jews, that show you that their claims are all false, then that nullify anything that's going down in Ethiopia. Because remember, Ethiopia claimed through His Majesty's speech to receive it from outside. So if the outside source have been proven not to be authentic, not to be historical, but to be but they use mythological stories to make historical claim that they can have the land of Palestine, then that solves everything. So everything that we're learning now in Ethiopia with books turning up from all about, we strictly have to view this as traditional history, but not to say that it is not valuable. This is the point that I really want to drive home, because I understand that by saying this, it tends to suggest that all of these things are not valuable. You can dash them out. As you have said, Ras Adonis, the Europeans have narrowed down the definition of mythology to be falsehood, which means that there's no value to it. you can get rid of the stuff, throw it over there. When really it is much deeper than that. When I read works from Karen Armstrong in her small book there, A Short History of Mythology, one of the interesting things that she said in that book is that we all want to know where we come from. But most of this information have been lost in the midst of prehistory, which means times before we actually have writings. So in order to have something of reference, some point of reference into prehistory time, they use mythological story as a device. But the stories are really based on reality, present reality in contemporary time. And then through anachronism, they backdate them into ancient time that they can be utilized as a point of reference to bring definition and meaning to what's going on in our life here now in the present. And I find even more reasoning that support that particular view when I look in Rushelin's book. And the Renaissance scholars have this saying from that time: contemporary culture shine brighter when reflected in the mirror of antiquity. And they said in that book, it was fashionable among the Renaissance scholars to create mythological genealogies that date back into antiquity. You see? So really, these mythological stories, they are not just false to throw out the window. They were used as devices to create something, some point of reference for a time that we really do not have anything factual. There is a saying that if you have a long line with 100 people and you whisper something in the first person ear, by the time it gets down to the 100th person, the story gets disfigured so much that it almost does not resemble what was said to the first person in the line. And so when you consider even oral history, it will tend to have that kind of effect to it. It gets embellished. You understand? As time go on, features add to it and so on and so forth. So we really cannot speak to anything from those times in factual terms. You understand? So these points are very important. As I say, Ethiopia was a headache. I mean, I have to go back to James Bruce. You understand? To guys like Martin Flaw and a number of other writers. I have to study the CMS and so on. This organization that set out to Christianize the whole of East Africa and Asia, right? This organization was formed in 1799, and they sent these guys up into Ethiopia, and Martin Flaw and them guys tell you straight in their book, they go amongst the Ethiopian people, study their language, and then go back to England and create Bibles and transfer the information from their European Bibles into these language that they can get these stories into the head of the Ethiopian people.
But if I'm not mistaken, is that same James Bruce is the first man that stole a copy of the Kebra?
Yes.
Well, he's the first person that find his way up into Ethiopia. Yeah. So he's searching for the source of the land.
He discovered that. That's why he shipped it in 1790 something. I think he steal the book of Enoch too, eh?
Yeah.
So
yeah, go through. But yeah, we got the plane land already, eh?
Yeah.
Just kind of taxiing in. Go ahead.
Okay, let me just wrap up. But what I was saying, critical thinking really is very important to the process. You understand? We just have to learn to have a different appreciation for things. As I say, modern mind is very caught up in proving facts. And these writings in ancient time were not about facts. They were really tools that were used to create a psychological platform that we can go forward You understand? This is what it's all about. And whenever we take these stories out of that context, and then we start to query about facts, then we lose the real essence of it. And that's what Ermias was saying also in his presentation when he said you cannot use it as biography and as history. And when he used the term science, he's talking about applying logic to it. That's what he means when he make reference to science, you understand? So it is very important to apply critical thinking, because as I say, there is no end to information to support whatever position you're going to take in whichever direction. In order for you to clear up the myths of that, however, you got to apply critical thinking. To me, I'm persuaded when I hear His Majesty say that the good news of both Christianity and Judaism actually came to Ethiopia, then I understand that it has its origin elsewhere. And where it has its origin, there is enough information out here to prove that it is not factual. They are mythological stories that were used to make historical claims. I think I'll end it right there. And as the conversation continue, I'll be bringing out different points from these books that I read and so forth.
Well, you
that was a commentary, right?
That
was a commentary.
Have to continue with the in-transit
Yeah.
flight.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, can I just jump one more quick point? One more. From this one.
It didn't come from the European Jews. It didn't come from the European Jews. It didn't come from white folks. That point needs to be
but at the same time, with all honesty, Adonis, you know that a lot of the books that you're referencing as well, the information comes from European Jews as well.
No, but hold on for a moment. I just spoke to my mother-in-law. She's sending a copy of a Amharic Bible she got back in the 40s or 50s, no, the 50s, right? My wife's mother, right? And so, the long story short, my wife's mother wanted to send it to me because she had this Bible for years, but she's able to, it's in Amharic. It was written and published by England. But she can discern, like other Ethiopians who are literate can discern that this is not authentic Amharic. This is like something else is being interpreted into it. It's not like other Ethiopian scrolls that are authentic. So our people can discern between somebody, like for example, I don't speak patois as that's like Caribbean patois. We have our own Geechee Gullah stuff, right? But if I write something in patois, other people are going to be like, yeah, they're going to be able to discern the difference between a native patois speaker and myself trying to communicate something in a sort of a patois. And I think that there, it almost says our people, Ethiopians, are idiots. Like they can't discern something that was written from a European perspective of it. And my mother-in-law, she did that. And I said, wow, she understood exactly the same thing I discovered, that these things, the same thing you talk about, you know, were like Europeans are writing, and they're doing a whole bunch of it today. But if you can read the language, you can understand the difference between the native document, the authentic document, and another document that is almost like going to Google Translator. Like you're putting something in Google Translator is different than how a native speaker would speak it. I think our lack of the linguistics is important. I just want to point that out. The linguistics, if we don't get in linguistics, we're going to always be under these Europeans because they had the ball come up amongst us, learn our languages while we might not have learned the language of the other tribe over there. You know what I'm saying? And they came into Ethiopia, but not from the European Jews. The European Jews are testifying in those documents of their perspective of it, because other information, other witnesses are coming out that is showing that they are not the authority. 740 AD means everything before 740 AD, right, was not them. So there was somebody else. See, I think we overglorify Ethiopia. I'm going to say that. We overglorify Ethiopia. And we forget that Israel was not the white Jews. I'm going to land my plane. I'm a parachute on that right there. I like to pick this up.
Okay, can I just quickly make the point that I wanted to make from this?
Good, make that last point quick.
There is a story in here, right, about when the Falashas.
And in respect to the
wanted,
rabbi point too, so make it
yeah,
too, please.
there was a story in here about when the Falashas wanted to return to Israel because the biblical stories that they have grown to believe in.
And the Kebernagas.
Seeing themselves
the Kebernagas
as
was a serious
Israelites.
site. The Kebernagas was used even in the news as a serious aspect of that.
Yeah.
Operation
No.
Moses Aaron thing.
Yeah, but hear this one. Hear what happened between His Majesty and these same Falashas over that matter. Because of the same biblical story now, Ethiopians were claiming that they are originally from Palestine.
Yeah.
And divorcing themselves from being Ethiopia because of these biblical stories. And His Majesty had to reprimand them, so to speak, and tell them, listen, hold up. You're Ethiopians, not Jews.
Is that the direct quote? Is that a direct quote? Is that a direct quote, or is that Haggai Ehrlich's take on it? Is that Haggai Ehrlich he's using some political stuff. So critical thinking, you hit it. Let's carry on with critical thinking. I like to get into that on a critical thinking thought. I get what you're saying. Basically,
me too. But I hear what you saying too, because the language very key too.
You know, like, so therefore you and me are not Ethiopian either.
Okay,
we're West African. We're West African. Why are we talking about Ethiopia?
Okay, no, let me come in. Okay, how I see it right now, I could be wrong, but I don't see His Majesty. I don't see His Majesty making that specific quote. Of course, I see His Majesty, his patriotism standing out right away. Let me just say a quick thing there. Like, I'm sure some of you see the video when the man was saying he's in the theater in Ethiopia, and he said when he was a young actor, His Majesty loved the theater and everything, and he had a part in a play where he was playing the Italian wicked man, and he had a scene where he slammed down Ethiopia real bad, and His Majesty got up and walked out of the theater.
Yeah, and like co-standard.
Yeah, His Majesty called him in after and give them a good shaking down. So I say that to say, we know that the patriotism of the king, very heavy. A play now, man, just having a play.
Let me
come to the point. I come into the point. So I'm saying now.
One thing I want to throw in fast, right?
Let me get to the point.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if with the situation there with I miss it there now.
Falashas, Beit Israel.
With these people, right? So yeah, I can see obviously the king patriotism come out right away, but I still, knowing him and diplomacy, I don't see him literally saying, "But you are not," and then the Jews. That's all I was saying. So that's why when the king said, if that's his direct quote, I can see even that's a subject area that's broader than just a statement. This is real scholarship, you know.
I believe, well, okay, let me tell you what I think, right? His Majesty is fully aware that Ethiopia basically adopted, and again, it is evidenced by his statement that Ethiopia received both Judaism and Christianity.
And that's, let me come in quickly there too, because we really have to see it. Now, that's the next thing too, you know, even though you're saying that, even anyone that believe in the Ethiopian narrative of how Christianity and even Judaism come, they wouldn't argue that Ethiopia received these things. Any true Christian will tell you, yeah, Philip baptized the eunuch and he brought it. So that specific point, I mean, I get your point when they made it now, but to drive it home, even those who with it will say, yeah, we're not fighting that. Yes, it came. So I just put that on the table just to check it out.
Okay, so hold that point.
Right.
So hold that point. If that is the case, then His Majesty, when His Majesty were reprimanding them, it was more than just patriotism. It was because he understood that they weren't Jews biologically or anything like that. but because it was an identity, a cultural and political identity that Ethiopia adopted.
Point well thing.
One
thing I
want to put in before the conversation seal off
and
is that I think the state of Israel, I think His Majesty never approved of that state being created.
Exactly.
Neither do you know. So that important to within what we're saying. The modern state of Israel, when Ethiopia and in United Nations, whatever it was, I don't think they endorse that state, you know.
No, but the reason His Majesty was not doing that for diplomatic reasons, because he had to be concerned about the Muslims, the Mohammedans, because Ethiopia was in a very peculiar position geographically.
We got to seal
and
this
he had to balance his hand, as if he played too much to the Jews, the Muslim will attack him. And if he played too much to the Muslim, he would lose the support of the Jews in his nation building.
We will have to continue this one here. And the other end, I don't know if we're going to pick up from where we right off, but that will have to be the case.
Please, let's pick up. And can you give me just a page quote? Give me a page quote to what you're referring to, Brother Isern. And yeah, let's pick up on this, but a page quote. And then this book needs to be looked at too. We the Black Jews, what His Majesty was doing to establish for people who are claiming, it's not just that they receive the Torah like a book, but they receive people. Even His Majesty's claim himself, his own claim in the Constitution, his own claim to the throne is based on a people relationship and people merging in a culture as one people. So there, yes, being Ethiopian. But if you could give me a quote,
give me a page.
Like a page.
Okay, tell her.
We follow up.
Yeah, I don't make that and follow up, man. No,
yes, sir.
I'm going to mediate that.
Good, hot. I love it. I love it, man.
And
I love it, man.
So, family, if I can say, blessed to our, yes, King, good. Say, get the last word.
Yeah, honestly, what I was referring to in that situation with the Falashas, it's just something that I remember from the reading, but I never really marked the particular area that it came from.
Well, check
that's something I'll have to bring for you.
No, what I was telling him, I will follow up with you with that. And right, that's the point.
Can do that.
Yes, family, blessed. Give thanks to each and everyone. Give thanks for the moment, and you don't know, we will touch again in the near future. Greetings and salam to each and everyone. Yes, family. Rastafari.
Give thanks.
Give thanks, family. Blessed love.